This episode of The Tome Show is brought to you by our patrons. You can support the show like them at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Welcome to Tome Book Club. Tome is a D&D news, reviews, and interviews show, and I'm your Tome host, Tracy Hurley.
And I'm Jeff Greiner. In each book club episode, we discuss one D&D related book, spoilers be damned, in full book club style. This time around, we read Dungeons & Dragons, Ravenloft, Heir of Strahd by Delilah Dawson.
And with us, as always, Eric Paquette.
Bonjour, hello.
Bonjour.
Hello.
I'm about 500 days into my French on Duolingo, so I am, proud of my streak, but also still very incompetent at speaking French. So
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Next episode, which we'll record in November, hopefully, likely, we'll be reading Dungeons & Dragons, Fallbacks, Dealing with Dragons by J. Johnson.
Yeah, November-ish. Sometimes November, because of the holiday, becomes early December. But of course, I'm going to be away to my conference in early December, so who knows? It'll happen at some point before like the new year.
For the holidays.
Right.
For the December holidays.
Right, exactly. So before we get started, I want to say thank you to our patrons. They help me pay the bills, and you can help out too by going to patreon.com/The Tome Show and offering as little as $1 a month. Now, let's talk about Heir of Strahd. I know I've read, I think the original Strahd book, I Strahd. Did we read that as a book club?
We did read that as a book club.
Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if we did that together or if I read that on my own. So this book struck me right away. In fact, before I even started reading it, that this book is a very different approach to telling a Ravenloft story. Ravenloft novels, in my limited experience, tended to, of the second edition days, tended to focus on the Dark Lords, it was told from sort of their perspective. I know I Strahd was, and then I can't remember what the sequel to I Strahd was, but I'm pretty sure I read that one too, and it also was told from.
It was an elf vampire one too.
Yeah. So in any case, this is not that. This is very much no. We're going to tell the story of a party of adventurers who end up getting lost in the mists and ended up in Ravenloft. In very much the way you would be experiencing the story if you were playing the game.
Yes.
Right. Which is actually I found to be a refreshing perspective in this situation, right? Now, that's the way most D&D novels are written, but not most Ravenloft novels. And so it's not a perspective we've necessarily had before.
Yeah, because most Ravenloft are more written like the gothic horror novels that you find, which Bram Stoker's Dracula is one of the more epitome of it. And Ravenloft books really evoke that feel.
And I found that the book really stayed true to its roots in terms of the game and the modules that exist for Ravenloft. I'm curious if you think it struck too close. Was it too true to the game? Because every now and then, like, I'm reading a D&D novel that tries to get so close to being true to the game that I can almost read the dice rolling between the lines,
Like the march order descriptions?
Maybe. Yes, talk more about that.
Because, I think there was at least two places where they were it came out very explicitly, exactly what order people were walking in. And, this person was at the end, and, they're even, the characters were thinking of, I'll be sure I'm in the middle. I think, the wizard might have said this, so that way there were other stronger characters on each, in front and behind.
Right. And that's a thing that you do in the game of D&D that doesn't always matter for the story. And I don't remember that really mattering for the story. So it very, that very much feels like something, a detail added to be true to the game that wasn't for story purposes.
And there was at least one fight where it was like they were clearly taking turns in a way, it felt like, because they even said it's you're up next to the
setting up combos, but you were seeing it the sequence happen.
Yeah.
So
it's also very clear that they were leveling up, but like they stayed true to the game to the point that it was obvious they were leveling up, but not so true to the game that like they talked about leveling up or even explained how it is that they were learning to do new things. Like suddenly the paladin is doing thunderous smite and the wizard has learned new 3rd level spells. Oh no, you've leveled up to 5th or 6th level. But like, because there I caught like the wizard at the beginning is like, oh, I can do acid splash and grease and magic missile, and those were like all of his spells. But then later on in the book, it's like, oh, throw that lightning bolt that was never explained how you learned,
Right.
And he does, and it's never addressed. It's just he's throwing lightning bolt now. It's like, oh, now I know exactly how much you've leveled up over the course of the adventure. So,
well, he did get that Hag's spell book, but they probably just didn't explicitly say that spell was in there. Maybe like that could be part of it. Yeah. No, I definitely felt some of that. Some of it felt a little awkward in that way, and not necessarily not enjoyable. Just I very much could tell I was reading a D&D novel.
Yeah,
I guess like
because setting and whatever aside, you could tell that they were writing to be true to the game, and there's a point where I appreciate being true to the game. I have run Castle Ravenloft, I think, in every edition since 2nd edition of D&D. I know the castle pretty well. So when they're describing like, oh, we went into the big doors and then there was just a short little hallway and more big doors and there were statues up watching, gargoyles or whatever watching. I was like, oh yeah, I know that. And then they went through there. And it's like, oh, and immediately to the right, we heard organ music and we went in and there was a dining room and a big organ, and I'm like, ooh, are they gonna find the secret door behind the organ? Because like clearly she had the source material. She was looking at the map, and the things that she was describing were very much from the Castle Ravenloft that has been mapped out pretty consistently for a long time now. And that kind of stuff, like I enjoyed. Like we have source material to flesh out that location and that setting. It doesn't need to be changed for any particular reason. But yeah, sometimes it was like, okay, this is an unnecessary detail that fits the purpose of the game that doesn't necessarily add to the story. And maybe we didn't need to see those dice rolling.
Yeah. What I did find is that it lacked the atmosphere, because Ravenloft typically has an atmosphere and all that. And the book focus more on the action adventure of the D&D, which is what you expect from a D&D book and all that. But it didn't focus a lot, and it lost out a bit of the atmosphere that you feel for Ravenloft that brings terror, tension.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely effort to bring in terror, but there was also some exploration of other domains in the domains of dread besides just Barovia. At one point they go to Lamordia, which has a very different style of horror to it, right?
Yeah.
But also, like, you're not wrong that it lacks like the gothic terror of the previous books, but it didn't not feel like Ravenloft does when you're playing it to me. Because it's D&D is at its core in many ways an action adventure game, and so taking D&D and throwing a party into Ravenloft, like you try to evoke the terror and the horror and whatever way you can, but also it's still at its core an action adventure story. So,
I had trouble reading the names of the characters, because the way they were spelled,
Okay.
they were spelled a lot like existing words. And does my mind when I was reading this, I was constantly, am I reading this right? Is this a typo? Am I meaning that it means something else? I don't know how it was for listening to the words. So, because you guys
Yeah.
do the audio.
Listening to the audiobook, like I actually, I had the opposite experience in that I heard how it was pronounced, and I'm like, oh, I'm imagining that this is spelled in this way, and then I'd see it in because the chapters are all just titled for whichever character has the main point of view, and I'd be like, oh, that's not how I would have pronounced that character's name, or spelled that character's name. But okay, I can see how that's how you would pronounce that.
And I read an ebook, so I didn't get any of the pronunciation, and I wasn't clear other than maybe Rotrog, which just made me keep thinking like that's how it was written. That's how I assume it might be.
I had no problem.
Yeah.
I can
it
tell
made
you.
me think of Scooby Doo.
Oh, I can tell you how the audiobook reader pronounced all of the names here. I've pulled up the chapter title so I can remind myself what all the names were. We have, and this is good for all of our listeners to catch up on who all the characters were. We have a human artificer named Fiel.
Okay.
Okay. The orc wizard, Rotrog. The tiefling paladin of Selune, Alishai.
Okay.
Okay. The drow barbarian, Shivarian.
Okay.
And then the Kinku cleric of Akadi named Ka. Which, honestly, I'm like, they definitely didn't make a bird person and name them Ka like C-A-W, did they? But so eventually I had to look at the chapter titles to see, oh no, Ka is spelled K-A-H, but it is just Ka. So
Oh, yes. Like for Alice Lachey, I was kept reading like, do they mean Abishai? The demon, the devil,
the dragon demons, yeah.
Dragon demon. And for Yell, in Francophone, I was saying, do you mean fée? I mean girl. The French word for girl. So I was like,
but there's an E in there. It's not fée.
Yeah, but L is she. So,
right. So there's fee, there's a fee, and there's an L, and that's.
Yes.
If you separated those in French, that's how they would be pronounced, wouldn't it? Fiel. If it was two words, F-I-N-E-L-L-E, it'd be Fiel.
It would be two words, but this was one word.
So I guess. Sure.
And then for Chevalian, I kept reading chivalry. No, Chevalian. Okay, so I kept between chivalry and Chevalian. So yeah, my mind was playing stuff like. Then you also have murder.
Yeah. And then the hairless cat Tressum. Which is an interesting thing because then it had like bat-style wings instead of the normal feathery wings of a Tressum and whatever. But it's basically, in my mind, it was basically a hairless cat, but a Tressum. And so it confused people because it didn't look like a traditional Tressum.
No.
Which also, if we want to talk about the mechanics of the game, doesn't make a ton of sense in that barbarians typically don't have what is effectively a familiar.
Well, isn't there something pointing to there may be something more than just pure barbarian when they start golden glowing?
Well, I think I saw that as whatever the subclass of barbarian was that started taking on like bestial traits at one point later, like at the last encounter, suddenly he rages, or what I interpreted as raging, and took on the claws of the cat and whatever. I saw that as you reach that point in your subclass where you're doing special things when you rage.
You also have multi-class ranger can get a beast companion.
I just sort of assumed they took a feat to pick up Find Familiar and call it good. So,
That works too.
yeah.
If we can talk a little bit again about the atmosphere, right? So over the summer, I had read The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and that's a gothic horror story about some of the creatures that we have in this book. And that one, the comparison like of atmosphere is just so, it was such a contrast of
Sure.
like really building up that that feeling versus here where again, like you guys were saying, it's more action adventure.
Yeah, this story clearly prioritized the feeling like D&D over really pushing that gothic horror approach.
Yeah.
Which honestly, like, that's probably fine with me. Gothic horror exhausts me pretty quickly.
Okay.
Whereas this is popcorn reading. Like it was easy to pick up and listen to a bunch of it, and I didn't have to think too hard and whatever.
It's interesting because like for me, it actually made it less enjoyable, but it might just be that I like books that I interact with more.
Sure.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. I don't mind digging into a book sometimes. That's why we have a book club, so we can talk about them and dig into them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I also do a lot of heavy reading where I have to do a lot of interpretation just in life, so in my work and whatever. So I'd like having sort of just a light, easy to read.
And it might make sense too, because like we had said, and I forget the name of the other land, but
Lamortia?
Lamortia, yeah, like that is just wonky, crazy, like still very dread, right? Like the depressive atmosphere.
Yes.
But now we're talking about a continuation of Frankenstein's monster writ large with rats that control bodysuits and
Yep.
everything else.
No, that's it's my understanding is that Lamortia is it's Frankenstein, it's mad science horror.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously Barovia is Dracula vampire horror.
So we haven't talked about how the novel starts at all yet.
No,
I don't think.
We've only been talking big picture. We haven't talked about the actual story yet.
So they kind of just all wake up in the middle of a clearing or something with some but not all of their stuff, which is a very classic, often looked down upon start to a D&D game.
Well, especially because like this is also how they met. It's not like they had been traveling. Like traditionally, Ravenloft characters are traveling on together, and the mists roll through and take them away. These were all people in far-flung locations of the Forgotten Realms. So we're still connecting to this core of the Forgotten Realms because this book, it feels to me like this book was written with the express purpose of appealing to the new audience of D&D fans, which is fair.
Right.
But yeah, so they popped up, like you said, these, 5 characters that I mentioned before? Is that the right number? I think so. They popped up in the clearing. And murder. They popped up in the clearing, having been drawn in by the mists. We get no backstory for who they are and how they got there, and so we get to sort of learn about who they are as they're learning about each other.
And they immediately start fighting because some of them want to go find somewhere else to be, and some of them want to find shelter. They might want to stay as a group. They might want to split apart. And then one of them ends up going to, there's a little cabin or something nearby, and they end up going towards that, and all heck breaks loose.
The cabin ends up being like a former butcher shop. but all of the humanoids there have become zombies, and including the deboned pigskins that were sort of left laying around, and so they end up getting into a fight with some zombies and these deboned pigskins that, in my mind, I 100% statted as a rug of smothering. Because that's kind of how they functioned, right? They sort of jumped on top of you and smothered you, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of they're just reskinning a pun intended, I guess, reskinning a rug of smothering.
It takes them a bit, but they are able to defeat those creatures, and then they start finding out who the healers of the party are.
Yep. And that being Ka, the cleric, and a little bit Alishai, the paladin. Although I don't know that Alishai ever uses her lay on hands on anybody but herself.
Not sure.
I know at this point she didn't.
And was there one healing? Was that when the healing potion came in from the artificer?
Eventually, they discovered that the artificer Fiel had a healing potion. Yeah. So yeah, and then from there they wrapped things up, and then they once again started bickering and arguing about what to do, and that's when Rahadin showed up, who is, for those of us who are familiar with the Ravenloft adventures, Rahadin is like his seneschal, his butler, whatever.
Yeah.
So master, what's the word? Major domo. So anyway, Rahadin shows up and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your troubles. My master would like to meet you. There's a carriage outside. Feel free to hop in. It'll take you safely to the castle." And they get
do this the easy way, or you can do it the hard way.
Right.
You can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way.
Right. And they get into an argument about whether or not to get into the carriage, of course, because it's very clearly like the author is very clearly establishing an arc of they don't like each other early on to by the end I would put my life on the line for these people, and so that's sort of the arc they're telling. But they're also being very much railroaded here. Like it's like you can get in the carriage and go to the castle, or make it on your own. By the way, there's dire wolves out there in those mists, and also the mists will turn into acid and eat your flesh off. So whatever you want. Bye. So,
or you can keep walking into that mist, and you'll just end up back here anyway. Like
right,
whatever, man.
But the second time they tried walking into the mist, it like turned into poison or acid, so it's gonna kill you also.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so just get in the carriage already.
So just get in the carriage. This is where the adventure is. Stop fighting it. So they get in the carriage. They go to Ravenloft. They are given dinner with the organ and what have you, and they meet Strahd, who welcomes them as a guest, as Strahd is wont to do. And they slowly but surely figure out, wait a minute, this is not the generous Count taking care of us in his lovely castle as we wanted to believe, right?
How can you say that, Jeff? How could somebody with that much power and that much money and that many books be bad? How could he be bad?
I mean,
that is our Rotrog.
That is Rotrog's approach. That's also a little bit of Fiel's approach. She also had this this is an important person. This is a baron. This is somebody in authority. We should definitely trust them. Until later on when she doesn't, and then it's too late. And then oh, you've got full run of the castle. You can go anywhere you want. If you're going somewhere you shouldn't go, you'll definitely know, right? And that was somehow part of the justification, I think, of Rotrog, of like, oh, well, we were attacked by this person, or somebody was attacked by this person. That's a clear sign. That's not where we should have gone. Yeah, but you shouldn't have to, like, the warning sign shouldn't be that somebody's trying to kill you. Like, you could just put a sign up. But there's a lot of like little encounters that first couple days, and they're like, okay, well, clearly we shouldn't have been there, but also there is the excuse from Rahadin and Strahd is always like, it's an old castle. Sorry, we try to keep it up, but we can't. There's very few of us, so we may have missed some things. Some creatures have snuck in. Oops.
It's just so draining, and we find out quite literally.
Right.
Yeah. Jeff, answer to your question about just put a sign there. This is D&D. Next thing you know, the sign has an animated object on it, or is a mimic, and will just kill you. So,
it's not just D&D. It's Ravenloft.
Yes.
And also, like, clearly, there's a reason there's not a sign there, and that's because Strahd wants them to get caught up and hurt and put in danger and have to rely on him for protection and all those things. So it clearly starts getting dangerous in the first day or so, and they start being suspicious, and then pretty soon Fiel stops showing up when they get back together, and they're starting to worry about that, and things get more and more dangerous, and they're finding creepy animated dolls, which I think that was Ka that ran into the animated doll with the silver needle, and it got rid of it by kicking it down the stairs. But then, like, it was interesting that, like, several times Ka talked about how, but I knew it was still out there in the castle and it was coming after me and it was gonna, and that which in hindsight now feels a little bit like a Chekhov's gun that never actually showed up in the third act. So. But yeah, so weirder and weirder things start happening. More and more dangerous things start happening. They run into werewolves. They run into bathtubs that look like a welcoming bathtub. It turns out to be an illusion, and it's actually full of gore, but you don't realize it until you've actually gotten inside of it. And then a creature jumps out onto the ceiling and skitters away. Or there's evil demon cats, Grimishkas in the closets, or what have you. There's all kinds of shenanigans and trouble that comes up. And they sort of just keep getting more and more suspicious until eventually Fiel stops showing up. And then they meet Van Richten, the famous Van Richten, who has been in Ravenloft for ages, definitely since second edition, who gives a lot of the exposition and explains to them exactly what's going on.
It winds up that Fiel has a second soul, the soul of Tatiana.
Yeah. Which is actually also an interesting approach to that, because that's not traditionally how that works either. Tatiana, the soul of Tatiana traditionally is reborn in new people on a regular basis, not ends up sharing a body with an existing person. So that was a different approach.
And how does Van Richten end up in the castle, but Strahd doesn't know he's there?
So it's never that's never not a thing that's addressed in this book.
Right.
It is not out of line to think that Van Richten has an amulet or a ring or whatever that shields him from scrying, that and that may actually be canon somewhere. And he's been in Ravenloft through multiple cycles of this process, right? He's been here, and he's been through this a lot.
Yeah.
How often do we have a Ravenloft book where they're just in the castle the whole time and they can't leave?
A book or an adventure?
A book.
Well, this is the first time we've ever had a party in the book.
That's true.
Yeah, because usually, as we said previously, is like they're are about the villains, about the Dark Lords, about stuff. They're not about the victims or the adventurers.
Yeah, though that was the thing that I felt weird, like not weird, but felt different. But I couldn't recall. I haven't read a ton of Ravenloft books, right? So I didn't know that the party part. But like I'm used to there being at least some other additional people in this story. Like maybe somebody goes outside the castle or something. Like you see something of the countryside or something. And we don't really in this book.
No. They alluded to the village of Barovia. They didn't allude to either of the other towns within the land of Barovia. There's actually 3 villages in Barovia, I think, at least in Curse of Strahd in the most recent version. Which I think they talked about when Curse of Strahd came out that they actually pushed the mist back a little bit and added another town or whatever. So they've actually added a little bit more than what there used to be. But yeah, usually like the story doesn't usually start in Ravenloft in the castle. It usually starts in the village of Barovia, and then you explore from there and eventually end up in the castle and find out that like Strahd's actually very welcoming. Come on in. But it's a little bit of a Hotel California, like, right? You can check in any time you want, but you can never leave. Because when you try to leave, you're attacked by the gargoyles or whatever.
Right.
But that's part of the horror, right?
Just,
you can get in, but then you're stuck.
yeah, and I think to me, just because of how much it became that action adventure thing with even with the gargoyles, it felt less like horror and more just like you are a low level character stuck in a high level realm.
Yep.
It was more of an escape room.
Yeah.
Well, sort of. They were stuck there until Van Richten came along, a higher level character, to get them out and give them a new purpose. But now it is not unheard of. Like, I have definitely run Castle Ravenloft without going to the rest of the whole Barovia, right? And I mean that is a thing that you do if you want to do like let's do Ravenloft in like 3 or 4 sessions. As you just go straight to the castle. But yeah, no, they were trapped until they weren't, and then they completely left Barovia and went to a different land, went to a different domain.
Right.
Which is something like it is not unheard of for there to be some interaction in the second edition novels of Ravenloft, but it's not very common. And the fact that these relatively low level adventurers are hopping on a boat and going to a completely different place. I also found it interesting, like there was so much effort to stay true to the description of the settings for so long in the castle. But then it was like, okay, now let's go off to Lamortia, and that requires traveling a long ways through the land of Barovia that gets no description. They're just, okay, we're on the water and through the mist, there's no description of did they go all the way to the sea, which is all the way in the southern part of Barovia, which means they had to travel through the mountains and probably pass by the Amber Temple, which is where the dark powers are that created the domains, and which they actually got into more of that lore here than I think any of the previous like the existence of the dark powers and this being a punishment for these evil creatures, like that's something heavily explored in the adventures that I don't remember from what few novels I've read. Now, I will get many comments in our Discord or whatever about how wrong I am, and that's fine, but I've only read a handful of Ravenloft novels, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do go about in this book. Van Richten at least mentioned about how Strahd keeps coming back and always wanting Tanya because he's in love with her, but she is not, and all that.
Right. You get the whole backstory, like, Strahd was in love with Tatiana. Tatiana was in love with his brother Sergei. He kills his brother and tries to force her to be with him, and she jumps off of the cliff into the mists and below and is killed, and it keeps getting reincarnated, and he keeps trying to find her, and on and on and on and on forever.
Yeah. Yep. Like, he is being punished, and we are just along for the ride.
Right. Which is true to the adventures pretty well. And this time around, as we previously discussed, Tatiana is there in this party, but Tatiana is sharing a body with Fiel. There's 2 souls in that body, and this is the great solution that I was going to say the party, but no, Van Richten comes up with is you need to go somewhere where we can split these souls in 2, put Tatiana's soul in a separate body, and then maybe we can break the cycle, because Tatiana's not just going to be reborn in a different body or whatever, but have her own body, and who knows? We can break the cycle and maybe have peace for a time.
Yeah.
So did you feel that this Tatiana was a lot different?
Different than which source? Which previous source?
Oh, I don't know. Just in general, because
Oh,
I don't know how to put it, but she always seemed like I thought she used to seem like she was nice, and this one, she is very much wanting that power. She just doesn't want
well,
Strahd.
from what I recall of Heir of Strahd, Titania was very, I think, written more meekly than she is in this book.
And I
I
feel
think
like
for the time when it was written, for how you write women during the 80s
Sure.
compared to how you write women now, that may be it. But
I feel like there were some. You're not wrong, but I feel like there were some things going on. Like, I think early on when we first discover Tatiana inside Fiel's body, the second soul in there that's talking to her in her head, I don't necessarily get the impression that she's not nice, but she's very, very anti-Strahd. She's very much like, we'll do what we have to do to survive, but we can't just give in to this guy. And I'm like, that's fair after what she's been through and what she remembers about Strahd. She does become power hungry later on, but at that point they've already been turned into vampire spawn. And so I kind of saw that as the curse, and that plays out in how the story ends. Because when the story ends, she is very nice. But the curse isn't following her anymore. But that's a topic of conversation that I don't know that we're ready for yet, because we haven't gotten through Lamortia yet. So
Von Richten had said that there was this doctor that she could help them. They go there, and the doctor says, we can kind of see about that, but first I have this quest for you, and they have to go get bodies because the research that she's doing involves stitching together a bunch of body parts and creating new things.
Mm-hmm.
And the university has cut her off from their body count, and they get a lot because people sign away their, I think they called it flesh rates or something. And so if you're poor, you sign those away, and then you end up in the morgue, essentially, in the university, where they're doing their own experiments.
Right.
And creating flesh golems and stuff like that. So they try to brute force it. Well, first they try to sneak, that fails. Then they try to brute force it, and that doesn't go so well. And then they have to create this kind of play with using bodies and using enemy corpse.
They pull a Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah. To get past the drunk dean, not a professor, a dean.
Right. It's very important to him that because they call him professor, and he gets very upset. I'm not just a professor, I'm the dean. Oh, sorry.
And it starts falling apart when it turns out one of the corpses they stole was his uncle. And even drunk, he recognizes it.
Right. So they manage to get back to their boat, and they flee, but he chases. And ends up chasing all the way back to Schloss Mordenheim, which is where the Dark Lord, whatever her name is from. Because I don't know that Dark Lord is the same as, at least in earlier editions. It may be what they may have recreated the Dark Lord for the 5th edition. Was it Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft source book? But I'm here on the Ravenloft wiki, and the original Dark Lord was Adam, which I imagine is clearly a reference to Frankenstein's monster, which was named Adam. and was the creation of Victor Mordenheim. So, and Victor Mordenheim has had a daughter. That would be who the
That
new
would be
person is.
Yeah, because they bring the bodies back. She gives them the thing to split the souls up, and then is like, well, but before you can leave, you have to do another thing for me.
And
Like,
leave
no.
murder as collateral, which
murderers.
for
Yeah.
Shivarian very quickly becomes that's not happening. I am not leaving murder my Tressum and companion with this person who clearly wants to do experiments on him.
So chaos ensues. They end up going into basically an elevator, and they start going down. And as soon as the doors open, when they get to the bottom, there's the guy from
The dean.
the university there. Yeah, or at least the monk.
I think it was a flesh golem.
Yeah, flesh golem. And then so they say nope, and then they go up, and they take a glider off the roof,
Right.
which allows Ka to fly for the first time, which is her big thing that she's always wanted to do, because she's a Kenku, but she can't fly.
Right, because Kenku lost the ability to fly in time immemorial.
Yeah.
But she's always wanted to, and worships the wind god. So
Yeah, and that led me to a question, although I know it's from way back, like way earlier in the story. Are raven bears, or whatever they call them, a real thing?
Were ravens?
Where
Raven
I
Bear.
thought
the raven bears were clearly reskinned owlbears.
Yeah. But I was like,
Oh.
am I just forgetting something that was written somewhere, or is this just like, this is new?
Yeah, no, I think that was something that, so far as I can tell, that was an invention of the author.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like the Batwing Crescent, which makes sense for Ravenloft.
Right. The author also, and we didn't really talk about this when we went through all the characters, but the author also very clearly approaches character creation in much the same way I do when I get to play, in that I want to put together combinations that work that you don't expect to work, because that's why we have a Kinku cleric, and we have the half orc wizard, who's very erudite and learned. The drow barbarian is not with the familiar is not an expected combination. The tiefling paladin kind of works, but it's a paladin of Selune, and specifically part of a cult that is not necessarily a goodly cult of Selune, who's a good goddess. So there's all kinds of, like, this is a player who very clearly wants to make characters that work, but you don't expect them to work, but just at first blush. And that's like, that's what you see. That's what, murder being a hairless cat is also like that same mentality of like, I'm going to take something and spin it in a way you don't know. And that's where I feel like the raven bears instead of the owl bears came from.
Yeah.
But they managed to skip the entire like trek that they had out to Lamortia, and across the bay with the Kraken and all that kind of stuff, because they find a glider and they just glide literally straight to Castle Ravenloft, skipping over all of Barovia again, so we don't get to see what the landscape of Barovia is like, and they crash through a stained glass window directly into Castle Ravenloft. And also it's the stained glass window going into the exact spot where Strahd is right now and currently fighting against Fiel. They just sort of crash right into the final boss fight.
And it did have that weird thing of, because I don't know the map of Ravenloft, but this weird thing of going through a stained glass window, but then being very underground.
Yes. So there is, because the castle is built on a cliff, the catacombs are under the castle, but there's also some of the catacombs that are at the edge of the cliff. And so there's actually like balconies with stained glass windows and whatever there. Oh, because they crashed into that before they ran up and ran straight into the fight. But they were real close. They actually went.
Yeah.
They were in the catacombs, and you got some description of the catacombs. And this is the one with the stained glass windows is Strahd's parents' catacombs, and so you get a little bit of that story. And then they run up, and there's Fiel, who's fighting against with Van Richten, fighting against Strahd, because this whole time that they've been in Lamortia, she's also been plotting to fight back against Strahd and try to escape. And then runs into Van Richten and is like, well, we can't wait on my friends. I didn't even realize that's what they were doing. I thought they just ran off or were killed or whatever. But we can't count on them. We have to plan on our own. Let's figure out how to fight back. And so they do, and they name check a bunch of so there are several important artifacts in most Ravenloft adventures that you can find in different places. There's the Book of Strahd, which they name check. There's the icon of the Raven, which they name check, although it never really makes a big play. There's also the symbol of Ravenkind and the Sun Sword. I think I got them all. But the Sun Sword, I don't remember even really being mentioned.
They mention the Sun Sword.
Do they?
Okay.
Yeah. So the artifacts get name checked, but only the Book of Ravenkind or the Book of Strahd even really comes into play in terms of being important to the story. So anyway, Fiel's been plotting, and by the time they and has become a vampire and is slowly, like, at first it's like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, and hates that I have to drink the blood of others, but then, like, literally by day 2, it's like, hey, look, there's somebody, let's drink their blood. Oh, oops. Turns out Strahd sent them to, draw a bath for me and help take care of me. That wasn't supposed to be my breakfast. Oh well, and she very quickly, you can very easily see the quick descent, to the point that by the time the party gets there, Strahd is on the ropes, and taking out Strahd is not the challenge. Taking her out becomes the big challenge. But they don't want to take her out. They want to beat her down enough that they can use their device to transfer Tatiana's soul into a new body and separate them. Did I miss anything?
Not really. I think it basically, she's like, to add on to your description, she basically saw people as like walking cans of soda, and she's just gonna pop one open and drink.
Yeah. Which I mean, you're very clearly seeing the descent, right? She didn't start off that way.
Yeah.
I mean, she accepted the drinking blood thing pretty quick, but was also a little disgusted by it.
No, I agree. It's just, so the other thing that we haven't really talked about is each one of them ends up confessing what they did.
Yes.
To get sent to here, basically. They don't realize that that's what happened at first, but I think over time it becomes pretty clear.
Yeah.
And like hers was, she went pretty far at taking down her sister, like having made that drink that would basically permanently injure her lungs and cut up her vocal cords so she couldn't be the singer anymore.
Right.
So it feels a little like that was there too already.
Nope, that's fair.
Yeah.
But I mean and that's true with all of them. Like several of them anyway. Several of them were like, they're at their core decent people, but boy, they went real dark for a moment, and that's what got them drawn into by the Mist into Ravenloft.
And I think for most of them, they hadn't caused any harm. I think she had already made the tea, but it's unclear if her sister drank it.
Right.
But she was much further along on that real mayhem part. Like for with murder, it was that he had bet murder. I included murder in the way to get out of debt, right? And had taken him out for a night of let's bond together before you're shipped off, which is awful and evil. But he at least was doing something to at least make himself feel better. But
sure,
I guess he could have just told Murder, hey, you're going to get shipped off to this evil guy tomorrow. No, but that seemed a little bit different than the, like, what Fail did.
No, although Rotrogs was pretty horrible. He poisoned and paralyzed his master and literally set fire to the school or whatever where he was learning when he was taken away by the mist. So he literally caused some mayhem and may have ended up killing everybody. We never really find out in this story.
But he didn't intend to set it on fire.
No, he was just a bad wizard who accidentally threw grease on a fire.
Yeah. I mean, there is some, like, she planned it all out.
No, she planned it out. But that's everybody planned it out and then were taken before they could execute. Except Rotrog, who actually caused damage before he was taken away, although he didn't intend to.
Well, then that's I don't know how to put it. Maybe they are all similar. It just hers did seem to me like that's going above and beyond.
Right. And hers
she could have just left.
Hers was an explicit act of horribleness for no gain other than her own. Whereas other people were drawn into horribleness because they were forced into it or because it was for a greater good that they perceived or what have you. Although not, I mean, Ka wanted wings and was going to literally steal an orphan baby and give it to a hag. That's not for the greater good. Right. And Fiel's is a little bit similar to Alishai, who was a selfish response to trauma and abuse. In both Fiel's and Alishai's case. So you're not wrong. There's a horribleness to Fiel, but there's a horribleness to all of them, No,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saying that there's no horribleness elsewhere. It felt so different to me, and maybe it's because of at the end what happens, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Right. No. Definitely. And she. I think it stands out for Fiel because unlike everybody else, she was sold to us from the beginning as the sweet and innocent one who grew up in bad circumstances. And she needed protecting.
Poor little
she needed
artificer.
saved. Right. Who was never allowed to get out of her sister's shadow and was allowed to learn artificer magic, but only to, enhance the business and help in the kitchen and poor Fiel, she's so innocent, and that's why everybody else needs to work so hard to go save her. And then, right. You're right. And then by stark contrast, then we figure out, she's not that. Like, her parents and sister were horrible. I'm not excusing them, but also she learned some horribleness through that trauma.
Yeah.
Or it was already there, which is why I wonder, because she also was one of the quickest to come back up out of the grave after she got buried.
Yes.
And just things like that, like, yeah.
Well, yeah. When she was turned, she was buried in a coffin, in traditional sort of vampire lore way, and rose out of the grave faster than Strahd had ever seen any of his other spawn rise out of the grave. Now, is that because there was already this darkness in her and she turned way faster and easier? Or is that because she had two souls in her and so there was something else in her mind that sort of stirred her to action and while everybody else sort of sat there and was slept through it or whatever, she was awakened by this other presence in her mind speaking to her. I think there's some interesting interpretation there and we can kind of go whichever way we want. So.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, they defeat Strahd, they defeat, which, boy, what level did they end up being? I knew they were at least 5 because we were throwing lightning bolts around, but now you're beating Strahd? Like, that's a 12th level character action.
Well, he was already beaten up by
Fiel?
The other two.
Yeah. And Van Richten was basically down. He was out of the fight, although not dead. But yeah, so they defeat Strahd and then they defeat Fiel and manage to split her souls. And Tatiana's got her own body and she's all nice and innocent and the Tatiana that you kind of remembered from the previous story, right? and they manage, the mists lift for a moment, and they manage to escape and get back home, and they all come out near Baldur's Gate, and they all have a conversation. They're like, "Oh, we're near Baldur's Gate. Let's go to Fiel's parents' tavern or whatever, and we'll go hang out there." And they get into a conversation, and let's go there and strategize and figure out what's next for us, because we're clearly a party and we're sticking together and we're doing things together now, and we're good at saving people and collecting things and whatever. And Fiel's parents and sister are still absolutely horrible to her, and horrible to her friends, and she's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll go talk to him, explain everything. It'll be okay." And that's when we get the big twist at the end of they separated the souls, but Fiel kept all the horribleness and was still a vampire because it was her body that was infected. And so she vamps out, kills her parents and sister, and is clearly and lays plans as a full-fledged vampire to basically conquer Baldur's Gate from within. And that, I guess, would be the next story if it ever happens, right? So that's the big twist end. That the sweet old Fiel is saved, and then turns out is the new villain.
I kind of was expecting that at the end, instead of them actually going back to it, is that they're still stuck, but it's now Fiel's realm type thing.
They'd go back to Ravenloft, and it would be Fiel's realm instead of Strahd's?
Yeah, but you never leave. Instead, it's Fiel's. So.
Yep. Yeah, and going to the adventures, depending on how the end plays out, that can theoretically happen, although nobody can be a Dark Lord unless the Dark Powers make them one.
Yeah.
So, and defeating Strahd never ends the cycle. It just sort of puts it on pause for a little while, so everybody gets a break. So,
it did feel a little different. I don't know how much it comes up in the adventures. The fact that she overwhelmed him and drank his blood to finish her ascent, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, to being a true vampire instead of just vampire spawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not... The adventures do not assume that any characters are going to become vampires. So it's generally assumed you managed to avoid that fate. So...
Yeah, it was just an interesting thing, because Strahd has an aura of control, right? Like, the whole book, he's controlling pretty much everything. And then now he has no control.
Right.
And she is now becoming this powerful entity.
Which could very well be that she's the new Dark Lord, and look at the horrible things that she's done to earn that. I could see that if the story were to continue on. I don't know that the story is intended to continue on. I feel like it was supposed to sort of end with that twist end, and then stop there. But
yeah.
So, but all in all, like I was pleased with this. It's a very different take on telling a Ravenloft story. But it's not one I didn't enjoy. I thoroughly enjoyed every bit of this story, even if sometimes I saw the dice rolling. I'm a gamer, so at least I kind of knew what was going on. I don't know that a non D&D player is going to enjoy it as much as I did, but I enjoyed it.
If someone goes in, who's not a D&D player, and then you want the horror Gotham story, that's not a book you'll get.
Sure.
You'll be more of, as we keep saying, it's more of an action adventure movie experience.
Yeah. But that it's if you're reading it to try to get a sense of what it would be like to play a D&D game in Ravenloft, in the Domains of Dread, it gives you a pretty good sense of that.
Yeah, I don't know. It left me not really wanting to play a game there.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
We've got different experiences, and that's okay. Any other last thoughts? Okay, then I think that we're going to go ahead and call that the end of this episode. It's time to say goodbye, but I want to say thanks to all of our patrons at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Special thanks go out to Merrick Blackman, Michael Harrison, Doug Palmer, and Hyperlexic. Without your awesome support and the support of the others who are patrons, I would have to pay out of my own pocket to keep the podcast going. And I really appreciate that other people are willing to chip in and hope that maybe some other folks might join them for as little as $1 a month.
And if you'd like to contact us, you can send email thetomeshow@gmail.com. You can find us on some social media. I'm usually Sarah Dark Magic, that's Sarah with an H. Jeff is Squatch, SQACH. And Eric is Eric MPAC. That's Eric with a C. So ERICMPAQ. Show notes and other great shows at thetomeshow.com.
And that is our chat about Heir of Strahd. Don't forget that in November, we'll be reading Fallbacks, Dealing with Dragons, the second book in the Fallback series by one of our favorite authors, Julie Johnson, who's one of the few people still writing D&D novels, so we get to continue enjoying her work. Until then, keep turning the page, Tomites.
I'm on the wall.